We are recording. So, Delia, if you would like to do the honors and let us know who Lucy is and why we're excited to learn from her today.
Of course. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And most importantly, our guest today, Lucy Del Gaudio. Thank you so much for joining us from New Jersey. I actually want to give you the opportunity to give us the pleasure of introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about you and why you're here today. It's all yours.
Okay. Hi. How I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. My name is Lucy Del Gaudio. I'm broadcasting here from beautiful Belleville, New Jersey, where it's about 27 degrees out, and I wasn't able to do my run, and we'll talk about my run when we keep on going. But I am a U.S. Army veteran. I served from 90 to 98, both in the active and reservist space. And I currently am an advocate for veteran causes. I am a program manager of special events and projects for Minority Veterans of America. And one of my primary roles as a women veteran advocate, well, I advocate for all veterans. So I just want to get that out of the way. But my primary focus is women veterans. And when I first started the advocacy space, I went into advocacy because of the lack of women healthcare needs in the VA here in New Jersey, because if you're familiar with Jersey, our VA is incredibly weak. We have about 27,000 women veterans in the state of New Jersey. We do not have a mammogram machine. We have half-a-day women's services, and there was a lot of women in need of services, especially in northern New Jersey, where I'm from, because the south tip of New Jersey is serviced by Delaware and Philly. So they get a lot of services that are unique to those two VAs. And also one of the roles I was advocating for was transition housing for women veterans. Transition housing is something that is very close to my heart, and we'll talk about that later, but it's very close and near dear to me. So New Jersey transition housing, again, we have 27,000 deep women, and we only have about 6 to 12 beds for women if you're transitioning. And if you're a woman with a child, you have no transition housing. So that's something that I was strongly advocating for. And so that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. I'm Puerto Rican Cuban. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Yeah, so that's basically where an introduction to me. So Delia, I don't know if you want me to just start rambling and we could start talking about why you felt this would be a great avenue for me. And I know me and you have been friends for a very, very long time. So you've seen my journey. You've seen how I went from Lucy when you first met me to Lucy right now. And it's been a pretty interesting journey, don't you think?
100%. As Camilla and Whitney and Lil, our other colleague, we were talking about, how do we start talking about, self-care and boundary setting and goal setting and all these important aspects that are so kind of important to have those conversations around the women veteran space. I automatically thought of you because ever since I've known you, you have been a big inspiration on that commitment to myself to ensure that I take care of me before I take care of everyone else. And so I just said, if she's willing to share how she's accomplished so much, which I know it hasn't been easy, we would love to hear what does all that mean to you? Why did you even get into that kind of discovery space of putting yourself first, and anything else that you'd like to share about that journey that you're still on, of course.
Sure. So let's start in 1992. In 1992, I was assaulted. I was stationed in Hanau, Germany, and I was sexually assaulted. And that was I truly changed after that happened to me. I was not the same Lucy that people used to identify with me as. Again, I'm Puerto Rican Cuban. I was raised in a very Catholic household, but I was raised in a family that was a bit dysfunctional. There was a lot of issues that my family faced. My dad died of AIDS in 1989, and that actually prompted me to go into the military. My mom couldn't afford daughters in college at that time. And because again, in 89, AIDS was a kind of, it was a sticky subject, and insurance companies didn't, want to pay for certain aspects of the AIDS treatment. So it really bankrupted my family. So we found ourselves in a position that was very difficult for my mom. So my both brothers were serving, and I sat down with them. One was a Marine, one was in the Army. My brother in the Army was actually a recruiter at the time. So I sat down with both of them and said, hey, what do you think? Give me your pros and cons of both services. And I went to the Army because of the shorter boot camp. I just couldn't see myself 12 weeks. I went with the 8-week course around. So again, I went through AIT, I went, basic training, AIT, I got to Germany, and I was assaulted. And then my assault had prompted a release of me from active to reserves, and I came back home. When I came back home, I found that the world that I left had completely structurally changed. And I found myself somewhat homeless because I was not welcomed into kind of the space. There was a lot of judgment placed on me because of not really fulfilling the commitment that my family thought I was going to fulfill. So, I had to do a lot of self-discovery. Again, the way I was released from the military, I was not released from I didn't have any VA benefits. I didn't have a GI Bill. Basically, I was released and I was given no benefits. So I had to really transition on my own. I had no type of transitions assistance. So it was very difficult for me. But what I decided to do was mentally, I put the veteran component, the military, in the back pocket, and I just started my life as Lucy, the civilian again. And, I started a family very young age. I started trying to build some equity for myself. And then I found myself in a position where I was holding so much weight of what happened to me that I wasn't taken care of. So in 2014, I ran into a high school friend and Marine as well. And he asked me what I was doing in the veteran space. And I told him absolutely, he knew I served. I told him absolutely nothing. There was no interest. I don't actually identify myself as a veteran. And he said, well, you should go into the veteran space. I think your story would be very endearing for a lot of people for you to share. So I started dabbling into different VSO organizations, and it was working out well for me. But at the time, I was Lucy, mom of 4, working, and I was 289 pounds because of me having these slight little episodes that I wasn't talking to people that I was a veteran and a sexual assault survivor. They were just pushing meds on me that I really wasn't speaking honestly and openly about why they were, what was going on with me. So I found myself really in a bad place. I was very unhealthy. I was in an environment with a lot of people who were very physically fit, that were, taking care of themselves. And I was always supportive of them. I was very supportive of the veteran space around me. And I was giving my 100% to them, but I wasn't giving 100% to myself. So in 2015, I had a massive anxiety attack that actually hospitalized me. And I was like, I really need to start taking care of myself, because again, I was hospitalized, and in that hospital room, that emergency room visit, they thought I was having a heart attack because that's what it felt like. And when they were treating me for like if I was having a heart attack and they couldn't find anything, and they were like, don't know what's going on, you're having chest pain. When the physician assistant walked out of the room and they met with my husband, they realized that my husband said to them, my wife's a veteran. And then they came back in. And then that's when I started recognizing, like, I have to deal with my PTSD. And I told them, yes, I was sexually assaulted. Something, the way the person was speaking to me that triggered this anxiety attack, it triggered me. I really felt like something was going on. And that's when my course of action started really focusing on PTSD because of MST. And again, change of cocktail, all my meds were a little bit different, but that change of cocktail really made me blow up. And I was really experiencing a huge gain of weight, but also I was experiencing like other things. I could barely breathe. I was having a hard time walking. I couldn't get up a flight of stairs. But also when I was on my anxiety meds, my depression would set in. When I was on my depression meds, my anxiety would kick in and I was imbalancing, and it was really affecting my home life, like everything around me. In the tail end of 2016, I went for like a physical, just my yearly physical, and they told me I was pre-diabetic. And that's when I said, that's it. I really need to change what's going on with me. I really need to look at myself and kind of change gears. So I sat down with all the doctors and the therapists that I was working in, and I said, I have to do something because my dad died when he was 51. I'm getting to that age. I'm probably going to be dead if I don't take care of myself and be more attentive to me, because I was taking care of everyone else. And I sat down with my kids. They said, Mom, you really need to focus on you. And we're ready for this. My kids were at ages where they could kind of take care of themselves. One of them was younger, but again, they were all surrounded around me. And I had a really good team of people in my network and my veteran network that embraced me and said, okay, Lucy, we are going to take this dive with you and we're going to help you. So that's where the goals started setting in. Like I needed to prepare this goal to get myself physically healthy, but also mentally healthy, because one of the things that I decided to do, which was a huge decision maker, was to become holistic. I was going to let go of my med dependency and try to be Lucy, like a functional Lucy that was going to set goals, establish boundaries, really take care of herself, but find a way that I could also take care of others, because the taking care of others is something that I really love to do. So I sat down with my team, we made this really great plan, and I decided, they saw that my chemical imbalance was so bad that me realistically trying to lose the weight that I needed to lose wasn't going to happen on its own. So I got a gastric sleeve, and I decided, and I started taking the steps to my holistic practice. And, holistic practices are very unique to you, because I can't tell you what I do is going to work for you, because I don't know what you like and what you do and what's worked for you. So I started dabbling into all these different type of holistic things. And I found that meditation was really a really good way for me to do. Yoga was my next foray. Running really became something. And running is the funny one, because if anybody knows me, I would never run. Like I would go to every cheer and I would cheer all my friends on with water and flags and all these pom-poms. And I would sit there and be like, no, I'm not going to run. Lucy, want to run? Hell no, I'm not going to run. But now I became a runner. And also more self-awareness, but really establishing boundaries that Lucy needed her time. And then, everything else had their time. And I really had to focus on that. So, this game plan, it was really hard to do at first, because I still didn't know how to teeter each side. It was really, really difficult for me. And sometimes, and let me tell you, I'm not 100% on this, because I still struggle. Because sometimes I, let loose and I decide to give something too much attention, but then I start noticing that I have to scale back. And my first goal was to run the New York City Marathon. So that was the first goal that I prompted on myself. And I did it. In 2018, I crossed that finish line and I felt like $1,000,000. But the support network that I had was something that was incredibly important for me for that goal. And again, I gave my support network the time that I needed to get my goal set, but also they realized that Lucy still needed to give herself that time that she deserved and she did. And I do that with my advocacy as well, because, I do have a corporate job. I work from 9 to 5, and then the corporate hat comes off, the advocacy hat comes on, and I do my advocacy work. And my advocacy work sometimes is very emotional, because the topics that I'm teaching and that topics that I'm advocating for is very emotional, because again, they're very personal to me. They're very personal to the women and men that I love, because they're my sisters and brothers that I serve with in the veteran space. But I had to find, again, that balance and that's goal setting. So that's something that, again, is really something you have to do in your own style. I could tell you how I do it, but it's really ultimately the way you do it that's going to be successful for you. So now, now I'm going on April 7th is 4 years going on med-free. And for me, it's an historic, it really makes a huge difference in my life. I kind of make it like my second birthday, because I feel like I became someone else. I became this person that I actually could say that I'm very proud of, because I grew up in a household where a goal was not something that they sat down and set with you. It was more of an expectation. And if you didn't fulfill those expectations, then, you weren't doing your job. So again, it's been a really crazy roller coaster ride, but I love my roller coaster ride. You know what I mean? I embrace my roller coaster ride, because we're not perfect. We're human. And once in a while, we have to figure out what's going wrong, to tweak it, to make ourselves better. So that's basically my shoebox speech. And like, if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer, and we could just talk. I'm always talking, so.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lucy. That was incredibly inspiring. I'm always so excited to hear you share your story, because I feel like I learn something new every time I hear it. So thank you so much for being open and transparent and sharing your story with us. We actually do have a question already, so I am going to go ahead and read it just for everyone in case you can't see it. Would you recommend mindfulness apps to get into meditation? What about managing anxiety or PTSD symptoms in the moment?
Okay, so when I started meditating, I started with the Calm app. And that was how I started entering into like the meditation space. Then someone told me, hey, Lucy, you should really look into the David Lynch Foundation. And my son is a high school wrestler, and I was at a wrestling match. I had my iPad with me and I was doing the research on the David Lynch. And the father behind me goes, hey, Lucy, I don't need to be looking over your shoulder, but my daughter works for the David Lynch Foundation. I said, really? And he goes, you know what, why don't we call her right now? You could talk to her about it, because they offer scholarships, A, to women veterans, and B, to women in general who have experienced some sort of trauma. So I said, really? So we had this call, I went on with her, and she recommended the David Lynch Foundation. So without anybody knowing, I went through the whole David Lynch Foundation meditation program. And let me tell you, it is one of the best things I ever did, because for me, I meditate 3 times a day. I meditate when I wake up in the morning, I meditate somewhere in the middle of the day, and then I meditate before I go to bed. But when it comes to like something comes on in the moment, I've learned that I have to take that step back and just start what I use as my breathing technique. Everybody's breathing technique is different. Everybody's way of managing their meditation is different. Like some people say, like, Lucy, I just can't close my eyes and forget about everything. You don't have to do that to meditate. You could go in and is it just breathing with your eyes open, staring at something, looking at an open sky, looking at a painting on your wall, looking at something that is near and dear to you. When I meditate, again, I try to focus on something that is in the room that brings me happiness. If I'm in my living room, it's a picture of my kids. If I'm in this room, believe it or not, I have a baby Yoda that I'm obsessed with right there. So I'll turn around and look at my little child, and here he is. And I look at him and I stare at him, so I have different ways that I know how to kind of calm myself. But again, it took me a while to do that. Also, there's apps like 10%, Headspace. There's so many different ways. If you're a Spotify user, they have a really great meditation channel, and you could test the waters and see what's going to work with you. But one of the other things that I learned how to do is when I go out running, my first mile is called my meditative mile. That's where I really get into, I find my breath. I try to let go of yesterday and start my day, and try to clear all the negative things that I experienced yesterday and bringing what's new for me today. And that's what I try, I really try to do. Is it successful all the times? No, because, sometimes we carry such really difficult days that they do trickle into your next day, and it's hard to let go of them. But I always try to manage my best and do that way. But that's the way I do my meditation, practice. I mean, I know a lot of people always thought about like meditation. If you watch like Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It, gongs and bells, and no, that's not my meditation. That's her meditation. That's not my meditation. My meditation was, again, going through the David Lynch, finding what worked best for me, finding the little things that I use. And then again, your meditative practice is your meditative practice by your design. So that's basically it.
Amazing. I definitely wrote down some notes because I've never tried the meditative mile, but I'm excited to incorporate that and see how that goes.
Yeah, again, when you start your run, I know that I run with music. I work out with music, but I run with music. So, I kind of wake up to the day, okay, what type of music am I going to put on? So, it could be jazz, it could be, R&B, it could be some punk music, it could be something different. And I put it on, and then, I start listening to myself, take those few steps, start the run, start finding my pace, listen to how my breathing is it heavy, is it slow? And then just start that clearing. And please, I look like I'm like completely disengaged. I've seen people that I know in the park and they're like, Lucy, you just blew by me. I'm like, sorry, that first mile, I'm not paying attention to nobody but me. And that's what I start that groove in, and then it just kicks in. And then again, I've become so, in tune with that first mile that it really helps me get to mile 2 and mile 3 and sometimes mile 4, and depending how many miles I set myself. Because one thing I do is I try to do, like, I didn't run this morning because it was pretty cold, and I try not to run when it's like, really, really cold. But I usually try to say, okay, Lucy, Monday, you're going to run 3 miles, and Wednesday, you're going to run 3 miles. So Friday, why don't you add an extra half a mile? And then, Sunday, try to push yourself and see how far you could go. So again, setting those goals. And also that's my intention. My intention is to get farther every time I go out to run. So that's what I try to do.
We have another question from Gabriella. The question is, what would you suggest to someone who gets sad when they see something they love? For example, someone has a picture of their horse or something that they love to do, but when they look at the picture, they become sad because they are not there, or because they feel like they're missing that part of their life and don't know how to get back into it due to mental health.
So that's a really great question, because I've had this discussion. Last week, I had this discussion 3 times. So, I call it grief. You know what I mean? We all grieve in certain ways. I don't relate grief just to death. I really look at grief as missing parts of you that you want back, but memories will help you get better. So for instance, I always tell everybody that, yes, I grieve my dad. I grieved my dad very, very intensely because my dad was one of the few people in my life that gave me the support that I needed. Another person I grieve dearly is my grandmother, my Cuban abuela Isabel. She was my lifeline. She was the person that kept me going and kept me alive. But one of the pieces and one of the people that I grieve the most is me, because I changed. When I was assaulted, I changed. I lost Lucy. I lost that 20-year-old Lucy, that 20-year-old Lucy that was full of life, that really had the goal of becoming an outstanding soldier and was an outstanding soldier. And my accomplishments that I had set for myself when serving in the military. And I grieve her because there was pieces of her that I absolutely love. But when I'm sad and I'm looking to go back into a place where I could get myself out of that sadness, I look at the pieces of that picture of that, say that dog, or I look at the picture of that Lucy, and I get those components back from her, because she idealistically is the only person that could really care for me is myself, because we're the only person that we could really take something back from and we could get something back from. And again, I have her really, really well in my heart, that when I'm really, really sad and I'm really dark places, I always find her. And again, you know, if my first dog, when I first got married with my husband, his name was Strummer. I see a picture of him and I think of the good memories that he gave me, and holding him and playing with him and doing things like that. So I always try to find the good in that sad that I'm looking at, and hopefully it gets me back to a happy place.
We have another question for you, Lucy, from Mary. Mary says, I have a friend who is a female veteran experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. She is in Long Island, New York. Do you have any advice for this veteran as she continues to couch hop and find herself in not the most ideal situations?
Okay, so wow, this is a good one, because again, every part of the country is different when it comes to this issue. One of the things I would do is call Department of Veterans Affairs in New York City. They have a wonder of different opportunities that they could assist you in. But one of the things that I definitely recommend her is to go to the VA and get a mental health check. See how she's doing herself mental health wise, or if she doesn't have access to the VA, go into ER and say, look, I'm feeling some sort of way. Because again, if she's in this situation, something else might be going on that needs to be fine-tuned before she starts taking her next steps. You know, always look for different services, like Catholic Charities offers an SSVF program. Those help veterans in need with different financial resources to start gaining their traction again. Again, if she's in Long Island, again, New York City, the Northport VA has great resources. They have one of the best women veterans clinic in the East Coast. She can go walk in there and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, and they'll help her in any sort of way. But again, it's one thing I have to say is veteran services for women are slow, because again, there's not so many out there. So, you know, patience is key, but she should start the first steps is by mentally doing like a mental health check to see if something's going on. So then they could take that direction with her, and then she could start, you know, taking the steps to getting herself back on the right path. But let me tell you, the Northport VA for women veterans is outstanding. And again, you know, SSVF programs like Catholic Charities, different resources like that. In New Jersey, we have an organization called Community Hope, which I'm a board member of. Again, transition housing. There's services out there. Again, for women veterans, it's a small pocket, but that's one of the things I'm hopefully that when we have this conversation again, I said, we have veteran housing for women, and that's what I'm trying to set.
Thank you for that, Lucy. We'll move on to the next question from Crystal. Crystal says, as an advocate, how do you reach other women veterans? I am an advocate and seem to have a hard time letting female vets know that there is help for them.
Yeah. Again, women veterans, we don't advocate for, we don't have, how can I say, we advocate for ourselves, and then we are like, okay, where are the other women veterans? Because we don't like to identify ourselves. So one of the things that we're going to start this year aggressively in the state of New Jersey is like a self-identification campaign to try to get more women to say, hey, I'm a veteran, because we do deserve the rights and entitle the everything that men get. So there's different networks that you could hop into, different groups on Facebook that you could find other women veterans in your area. Try to connect to those. That's the best way to do it. But I kind of, my veteran space, again, my women pop was very small, and I still struggle here in New Jersey to get the women to come out and say, hey, like, tell us what's going on, tell us what you need. So again, I recommend trying to find different organizations on social media, make sure they're legitimate 501c3s that have done outstanding work. And really that's how you gain the momentum and find the women that you need to advocate for or want to work with to do the advocacy work.
Thank you, Lucy. We've got another question from Elizabeth. I called my transition period with the Marine Corps term fog of war. I find myself feeling attacked in classes, much worse with remote learning. I know that I'm triggered from my past experiences, but I draw back and I remain silent. I feel powerless and I want my power back.
Don't we all? I mean, I honestly, it's interesting that we feel this way as women. We feel this way as veterans. We feel this way, those fogs that we get into, and where I went through a foggy period this summer. I was doing very aggressive advocacy work, and I would come home and fog up, and I called it like imposter syndrome fog. I called it like, why am I doing this fog? I called it, why are people looking at me different? But it was all me. It was all me telling myself that these things were happening when, I could work at it and I could take myself out of this fog. But another thing is, remember, we live in a day and age where people are incredibly judgmental. I don't judge anybody. I don't, who am I to judge the person sitting next to me? Who am I to judge anybody on this call? Because let me tell you, I have demons that are so deep that, only I know how to play with my demons. And, sometimes I have to pull them in once in a while and say, hey, like, tell me like what's going on, because I need to get myself out of this, feeling this fogginess. And it takes practice. Again, I'm a 92. I'm a 90s woman veteran. It was a different military back then. And it was a very male dominated, and it still is a very male dominated. It was not, there wasn't this, Me Too, I call it the military Me Too movement that was out there really helping us. And again, remember, women veterans, we're such a small pool. And sometimes you look at the next woman veteran next to you and you don't know she's feeling the same way. And what I really had to learn was, now when I'm around other women veterans and we start talking, I'm definitely listening to what they say, because definitely their stories are going to help me. So, what I tell everybody is like, don't give up on, thinking that things are not going to get better. There definitely are going to be better. I always tell everybody, it took me 49 years. I'm going to be 50 this year. It took me 49 years to get myself to where I am right now. But it might not take you that long. It just took me that long. But it took me 49 years to tell someone that I feel really great about myself. So, yeah.
Lucy, we have kind of a lighthearted question. Riva is wanting to know if she applies for a David Lynch Foundation scholarship, if she can put you as her referral.
You know what? If you send me an email, I'm going to send you through the person, because they don't want others. They don't want people from the, it's a long process, but I'll tell you who to put as your referral to get in. Yeah. Cause trust me, I don't know if my name will get you a referral, but I could tell you, I'd rather put you to the right person to get a referral. So you could definitely, we could email each other and I could help you through the steps. Yeah.
Lucy, I love your message of holistic being self-defining, like what is your own and unique to every person. And I love that your ideas about your different visuals being unique to every person. I certainly relate to that quite a bit. And I'm wondering if so you spoke about how your support system and how supportive they were and how you kind of built that support system. How would you suggest folks kind of navigate figuring out what their unique support system might look like and what they might need with that?
Yeah, that's a good one, because again, my support system when I started this venture looks uniquely different than it is right now. And it's amazing what you start building as your support system. There's always that. There's still the core of my support system when I started out this. My husband, my children, friends. I have really close friends that have become family to me. So they're still there. But then you meet people along the way that give you that like inspiration, like, wow, like I really like being around them because they do X, Y, and Z. And I see myself kind of like enjoying their vibe, I call it. Like I see something about them like, wow, I want to learn how to do that headstand like her in yoga class, or, wow, like, she's doing a really great stride. I see her in the park. Let me see those type of things. But, so that's what I've tried to do. Like, if you look at the people around me that are not my family members, like the people like my common core was a married couple who were triathletes. One person that was a runner, actually two people that was a runner, and then a person that was like another triathlete on her own. And I started picking their pieces, right? But they also were really willing to support me. But a very important piece of that puzzle, if they were able to call me out when I wasn't doing my job. Because one thing I hate is people that sugarcoat stuff. They never sugarcoated with me. They told me, hey, Lucy, 5 o'clock, you're getting up, we're going to meet at the gym. And if I wasn't there by 5:15, they were like, okay, where are you? Get your butt up. You told me you were going to do it. Get there. So they put me in my place when I needed to get put in my place. And that's something, accountability, consistency, making sure that you are giving the person the accountability the way they consistently need to hear it. Again, if you can't call me out on my crap, then you know what? I need that. That's something that I need in a person, an attribute that I absolutely love, because I need that. I need someone to push me like, hey, Lucy, that text at 9 o'clock at night. Okay, we're going to meet at the park at 5 o'clock. Be there with your headlight on. We're going to go run 3 miles. And I'll be like, oh my God. And then at, 4:35 in the morning, I would get that text. Okay, Lucy, I'm getting dressed. We're going to meet at the park. And I'm like, but it's cold outside. It's not cold enough. Put your stuff on. And that's basically it. And right now, I'm when I run on my own, I'm my own person. So I set these really crazy like memos to my alarm, and it's like, hey, Lucy, this is your wake up call. Talking to myself, like, hey, Lucy, it's your wake up call. Get your ass out of bed because you said you're gonna go run, and that's what I listen to, and I do it. So that's basically it. But again, you have to cultivate a culture where the people are the ones that are kind of keeping you accountable for what your goals are, but also that have those things that you kind of want to tweak and betterment in yourself.
So we have a little bit of a follow-up question from Lil. She says, "Hi, Lucy. How would you suggest building a network or support group with others during this pandemic, a time when there's limited human interaction?"
Yeah, again, we're living in a time that's very unique to like this. Again, Facebook groups that are doing this kind of work. I use my friend Stephanie Gatas has an organization called the Pink Berets. They do Zoom calls, they do peer networking. Minority Vets does, Minority Veterans of America does like these touch bases. There's different organizations that do these kind of fine tuning type of things, and you could start meeting people. Again, look at different veterans organizations. They are doing type of Zoom calls. It doesn't have to be a veteran organization either. It could be an organization of another passion that you might have, and look them up and just, start like joining little calls here and there and see what really, fits, like is feeding what your hunger in certain aspects. That's what I've been doing. I mean, it's amazing what's out there, and really like gets you like, wow, look at this. I found a Facebook page for people that love jazz, and we just hop onto calls just to listen to like one album together and talk about what brings us joy in certain songs and certain pieces. So those type of things. So that's what, again, just doing a lot of research, finding what's going to feed your soul, and then joining them, and then building a network around that.
Thank you, Lucy. I actually have a question that you inspired me to kind of do this. I haven't done it yet because it takes a lot of courage and I don't think I'm ready yet. But during your transition, you shared that you experienced so many different challenges as you shared with us. If you could, and I know you already wrote a letter to your younger self, but if you could share a little bit of what would you tell that young Lucy, to kind of help her and support her through everything she endured. I'm going to write that letter one day, I promise.
So a few months ago, I was challenged by a friend. Her name is Pamela Heel, to write a love letter to my younger self. And I sat there and I wrote this letter to my younger self about, like, what did you love about her? What love was to her. And I really enjoyed writing to her that, you love music, you love art, you love people, you give yourself to people in a certain way that's unique to you. And you are a really outstanding person, and you should really keep that momentum going. Don't give up on your passions. Don't give up on your dreams, be kinder to yourself, be more compassionate to yourself, be more authentic to yourself, give yourself the opportunity to breathe. And I always tell everybody that, like, give yourself that moment and that breath to just always constantly breathe. Because again, if you stifle yourself and you don't know how to breathe, you're going to lose yourself. And that love letter was really important to me, because I go back to it every so often and just reread it and make sure that I'm doing what that love letter told me to do. And that was a great moment. I loved doing that. And I actually challenge everybody to sit there and write yourself a love letter and tell yourself what you love about yourself, because it really feels great when you're like writing and like, oh my God, like, this is what I really love about myself. And, I've always loved my laugh. Because I think I have a very unique laugh, and I love it when it's so funny that I like snort, those type of things. And that type, just write it down and give yourself the love that you really do deserve.
That's beautiful, Lucy. Thank you so much for sharing. We welcome any and all other questions from our attendees.
And if anyone wants to ask their question themselves, just send us a chat and we'll make sure you have the ability to speak personally to us.
I would love to see some people. This is awesome. But yeah.
While we wait for more questions to come in, I guess I'll just keep going from my list. Lucy, could you share with us one or a few books that have really kind of influenced your trajectory? I know that I'm always in love with picking people's book ideas because I'm always looking for a new book to read.
So this is a crazy one because people are going to think that I'm odd, but so I love to read, and there's been times in my life that I read like 3 or 4 books at the same time. So if you look at my table next to my bed, my nightstand, I have like tons of books there. But every year I read all these different books. Like, I love Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm a Brene Brown, so I'll always pick up a Brene Brown book. But my 3 books that I read every year are Love in the Time of Cholera. I read The Alchemist every year. And I read Catcher on the Rye. Now, everybody's going to think, okay, Lucy's a serial killer. She's really Catcher on the Rye every year. But again, for me, there's something I love. I just love that book. There's something about that book that just is very endearing to me that I really, really love. So those are my 3 books that I always go to. Cholera is just because that whole love story of, who doesn't want a Valentino Arisa in his life? And, that's why I read that. And, I love Loudon, I love in Catcher. It's just, for me, there's just connections of that book that I feel were very to me. And then The Alchemist is just such a beautiful story. And just really, again, and what's interesting is I go back to those books and every year I find something different within them. So
Thank you.
We have enabled the ability for everyone to talk. So if anybody has a question, just feel free to say to Lucy. Unmute yourself and go for it.
Hey, this is Riva. Can you hear me?
yes.
Hi, Lucy. I was wondering if you could speak at all about EMDR as a modality for treating trauma.
Okay, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to take a deep dive into it. But for some people, it's a really good way of going. I wish I knew more to tell you more about it. But let me take a step back with this one because again, like I said, everybody's path is incredibly different, and we all have to tap into what's going to work best for us. But what I suggest you do is, let's share some emails. I know a few people that it's been their walk of life to do it, and I would like to share what they've shared with me, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I would love
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like to add to the comment. I'm Gabriella. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yep.
Okay. With the EMDR, I know it also is very tricky when you're dealing with trauma because dissociation can happen, and sometimes EMDR and dissociation do not go hand in hand. So it's kind of like a gray area with that. I've heard like 50-50s. I heard it's really good, and I heard it doesn't do anything. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, that's why I again, I've heard some, like you're saying, I've heard some really positive attributes of it, and I've heard some really negative attributes of it. And that's why I always tell everybody's practice, everybody's self-healing, everybody's self-care is so uniquely different to them. Because let me tell you, I tried some stuff that I'm like, my God, Lucy, why did you try that? Like, it was so like, I came out of it even feeling worse than I walked into it. So that's why everybody's self-care, everybody's self-practice is really what they feel. But again, I have some people that have worked in that space very positively, and we could, I could throw those names at you.
I really appreciate, Lucy, that you are advocating for try it all and see what works for you, because I think, you know, for some folks, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, it's a lifesaver, and for others it isn't. And so you know, there are certain types of therapy that work really well for some folks, and some types of trauma and some that don't. So I think that that's really an important message.
Yeah, Camilla, I have to say, I really, I don't want to use the word hate. I really dislike when someone sits here in this type of forum and says, okay, my way is the highway and this is the way it's going to work and you're going to listen to me. No, it just doesn't work, because again, my rhythm, my rhyme is different. It's me. It's not you. You have to find your rhythm. You have to find your rhyme. You have to, like, it's your drum beat, and nobody else could tell you how that drum beat goes. You know, again, me and you can go to Baskin Robbins and I'm going to pick the Rocky Road and you're going to pick the strawberry, but I'm not going to tell you, okay, Camilla, the Rocky Road is the way to go and you're going to eat that Rocky Road. I can't do that. You know what I mean? And again, I always look at self-care and your, like, basically your self-care description as Baskin Robbins, because there's so many flavors out there. You just got to, take that little spoon and test the waters and see what's going to taste best for you. Like, again, another thing that I do constantly is cook. I love to cook. Cook is like another way of my cathartic way of solving things for me. Like, hey, I woke up and I'm feeling crappy. I'm going to make banana bread today. And I'm going to make this today. And, I'm going to go into my cookbook and go really deep into something difficult that I've never made before. And I'm going to try it out. Because again, it helps me get my sensation back. I put, my music on in my kitchen and I go to town and it makes me feel good. It's something that I love to do. That's one of my self-care practices. So again, you got to taste the flavors before you say, this is my regimen.
It's so beautiful and empowering to hear you say how much control you took over your journey. And I really think that that's kind of a thread that we've heard from a lot of your story. It's that you took, you kind of became self-aware and you took ownership and control of what worked best for you. And it seems like it's going amazing, because you're still, I check my social media in the morning and Lucy already is back from her run, and I'm like, oh my God, I really need to get out there and hit the pavement. So you're definitely inspiring at least one person, and that would be me.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's funny. A friend of mine told me, like, hey, Lucy, I haven't seen you go out and running. I'm like, well, it's cold. I go, but if you would like me, I am in my basement at 5:30 in the morning on my treadmill. I could show you myself on that treadmill. And they're like, you know what, Lucy? Yeah. Could you put yourself at 5:30 on the treadmill? I'm like, sure, I'll put myself at 5:30 on the treadmill. So now you're going to see me on cold days on the treadmill at 5:30 with some sort of inspirational quote, because, you never realize, when you say that, I love knowing that I actually am connecting with someone. Like, I remember when I was my different self, I used to look at people posting what they're doing, like, for self-care. I used to be like, overachiever, like, I don't want to see their posts, And then when I started this panel, I'm like, damn, what is they're doing today? Let me try this and I'm going to try that. You know what I mean? So again, I thank you for saying that. You look at my post and my psychotic self at 6:45 running in the park. But I'm grateful that, if I could connect to one person, that makes a world of difference to me. And it helps me also, because then I said, you know what, I'm going to start, looking at things a little differently, because when you're at your lowest and you get a little bit of, like, that self-confidence, sometimes it's really nice. So thank you for saying that.
I would venture to say you're connecting with many people on many levels.
Thank you.
We have another question. Someone asked if it's okay for us to share your email and your social media handles.
Of course. Yeah. So I'm just going to warn you that in my social media handles, I do curse a lot. So if you're not cursing friendly, I apologize. I always say like, I just have potty mouth. I apologize for that. So, once in a while I'm like on a tangent and you'll see me in my tangent, but for the most part, I try to do things that are inspirational for others and try to, try to help others. Like today's post was dedicated to my girlfriend Leah. She is a Paralympic archer with MS. She is a Army veteran who in the 80s her unit was given a bad batch of an anthrax a shot. 64 of them got the bad batch. Only 12 of them are alive today. She is alive. She has MS, but she does things that will amaze you. She's another one you should follow on social media. And today's her birthday. So I basically honored her today for her birthday and how much she has done for me. She's another one of my lifelines and one of my circle.
So Lucy, thank you so much. We're running out of time here. I do want to say that if anybody wants to receive information from the chat and from the just kind of suggestions, if you could just go ahead and opt in, quote unquote, in the chat, because we want to make sure that we have your permission to send you some of this information and an email follow up on the other end. So if you wouldn't mind just saying like, I would like that, or opt in or whatever in the chat, just so that we know who all wants to get that information. Lucy, this has been so wonderful. We really appreciate you. And this has been exactly what we needed in this time period. I know I learned a lot, and we're so grateful for everything that you are doing for women in general and for veterans, and just for sharing that in this space we need to be brave, and that you were really vulnerable and brave. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity. It was an honor. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And we welcome you all to join us. We will be doing this monthly, so please join our WVEDs community group on Facebook, where you can learn and keep up to date with all of the upcoming dialogues we'll be having in the future.
Yep. So our next one is going to be Black women in STEM, focused on women veterans who are in STEM fields. So if you think that sounds interesting, please log on in February.
Yes, and we have all of the registration information on our WVEDs community and on our website and our main Warrior Scholar Project social media.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. Have a good one.
It's great seeing you again, Lucy.
Bye. Great seeing you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
And